If someone had told me a year ago that I would fill a giant metal box with cold water and willingly jump in, I would have called them crazy. But it turns out I'm the crazy one. So in this video, I want to share why my husband and I decided to convert a deep freezer into a cold plunge and share what that experience has been like. And I do plan on making a dedicated video all about my cold exposure journey, because this is just the last thing that I would have pictured for myself. But first, let's quickly run through the different types of cold plunges. The first is what I would classify as a basic container. This would be your bathtub, a feed or stock tank, or any of the inflatable and plastic containers being sold for ice baths. Every time you use it, you add water and you add ice to cool down the water. So either you make your ice at home or you go out and you buy the ice every time you want to do a cold plunge. And I should mention that, yeah, you should probably drain it if you're not doing anything to clean the water. Now, how much ice you use depends on the size of the container and how cold you want the water to be. The general rule of thumb I've seen recommends using 1 to 2 pounds of ice per gallon of water in the container. If you can create and store enough ice, this setup can basically be free. But if you have to buy ice, you can expect to spend probably $10 to $20 every time you want to do a cold plunge. But maybe you want something that's a little more readily available. And if that's the case, you need a system that, yes, of course, keeps your water cool, but most important, you need a system to keep your water clean. And you keep it clean through sanitation, filtration, and circulation. Moving forward, I'm going to refer to that as the water cleaning solution. You'll have to either add all of these features separately or find something that incorporates them all. So we'll start with your basic container plus a chiller plus your water cleaning solution. This eliminates the need to make or buy ice, but you still have to purchase the device that chills the water. And you have to make sure that the chiller that you buy is powerful enough for the size of the container that you're using. So if you have a larger container, you're going to need a more powerful chiller. And from what I've seen, it looks like these devices range from $900 to $1,000. Next up is a deep freezer plus a water cleaning solution. And just so you know, some people may call it a chest freezer, deep freezer, it's the same thing. Now, normally, deep freezers are used for storing bulky items that don't fit well in a fridge freezer. And, well, at the risk of sounding super morbid, they can hold a human body quite comfortably. So the chilling capability is built in, but you do have to do some work to convert the deep freezer into a cold plunge. Because remember, deep freezers are not meant to hold standing water. All in, this can range from $400 to $1,500, give or take, but it all depends on the quality and the size of the deep freezer that you choose to buy. And finally, you can get a standalone tub that is specific for cold plunges. So it has the chilling capability and all of the water cleaning capabilities that you need, so you don't really have to think about it. But these things are so expensive. They seem to start around $5,000, but I've seen them go all the way up to $12,000. Now the big question is, why did we choose to go with the deep freezer? But to answer this question, we have to go back to when we were fairly new to the world of cold plunging. That's when we initially chose to get the ice pod. This is one of those inflatable basic containers. It was really easy to set up, but we quickly discovered just how much ice we were gonna have to use anytime we wanted to use it. So all of the advertisements that say that these cold plunges will be able to keep your water cold, these advertisements do not apply to anything Texas. Now, we knew that we wanted to incorporate cold exposure into our weekly routine, ideally multiple times a week. So having something that was readily available for us to use was key. But the caveat is we also wanted to have the cold plunge in our garage. Since the fancy standalone tubs were way out of our budget, and not to mention I've heard that they can be really loud and they can generate a lot of heat, and we do not need more heat in our garage. So this really boiled down to, we need to either get a chiller or we need to get a deep freezer. Conveniently enough, my husband went to visit one of his friends who happened to have one of these deep freezer setups, and he learned 2 things. One, he loved having more room to extend his legs, and it just made it an overall better experience. And 2, it's not that difficult to set up and maintain once you know what you're doing. Once Alex came back from that trip, it kind of sealed the deal, and we decided that we were gonna go the deep freezer route. But we knew we had a lot to figure out and a lot to learn. So this includes things like, what type of deep freezer do we need to get? How do you actually convert it into a cold plunge? How do you use it safely? And how do you maintain it? If you're gonna go through this process yourself, Alex and I highly recommend going to the website chestfreezercoldplunge.com, especially if you wanna learn how to do things right. This is the website that we referred to throughout this whole process, and a huge shout out to the guy who runs it. I'm not gonna go into the nitty gritty, but we'll at least cover the main points. To start off, you've got to choose your chest freezer. It's recommended to get one with a white enamel interior, and we ended up getting the 19.8 cubic foot Frigidaire. It's massive. We could have gotten the 14.8 cubic foot one, but Alex, who is 6 feet tall, really wanted that extra legroom.
So step one, we have to seal up all of these little cracks. So if you zoom in here, you can see that this enamel surface has a bunch of small cracks. So there's little gaps. So if you were just to fill this up with water, it would leak out of the bottom, it would get all rusty, it would probably break the compressor. So the way that we seal it is with this wonderful product called JB Water Weld, which is a 2-part compound, which you break off a little piece, you mix it together, and then you make little snakes with it with your hands, and then you use those snakes to press into all the gaps. And before you do that, you actually want to sand the area so that it can set in a little bit better, because this enamel surface is very smooth. So as soon as I'm done sanding it, I'm going to come through with this product, which is acetone, available at any hardware store. I think this is like 10 bucks. I'm going to use this to clean up all the dust and dirt and all those little small particles that come off when I'm sanding. It also will slightly thin the area so that it'll grip the epoxy, this JB Water Weld, even better. So we've been busy over the last couple days getting this cold plunge set up.
So you can see the JB Water Weld all along here, and so it's all throughout there.
I constructed this little ozone generator holder, complete with the timer, so we can have this set on about a 6-hour window. We're gonna plug the freezer into here as well as the ozone generator. The pump is in here, pretty much ready to be set up.
So the pump is to keep the water moving. The ozone is to sanitize the water on a timer, and
But the pump also gets some circulation going and some filtration. Then we're also going to get another pump, which is kind of like a bilge pump when we want to drain it. We'll just set that at the bottom and it will flow water through a hose out onto the driveway. I salvaged some planks that somebody was throwing away on the side of the road, which are going to be necessary to help evenly distribute the weight of this, because these freezers aren't designed to hold, you know, hundreds of pounds of water plus
bodies.
plus bodies. I think with that, we're pretty much ready to fill it up with water. They recommend filling it with cold water with ice so that the condenser doesn't have to work so hard initially.
For the first month, we used our cold plunge as is, but we decided to protect the interior by installing a pond liner. It was a huge pain in the butt, and it looks like we're sitting in a giant trash bag. But hey, I'd rather we protect our investment, which all in, this setup cost us a little over 1,200 bucks. At the time of filming this video, we've had our cold plunge set up for about 3 weeks, and I honestly love it so much more than I thought I would. Alex and I have been using it for about 3 minutes, 4 to 5 times per week, and we're so happy with how easy it is to incorporate into our weekly routines. A lot of times I will go in after I've taken the dogs for a walk in the morning. We'll walk for an hour, and by that time it's 80 plus degrees, it's super humid. I'm disgusting. So I'll just like rinse off in the shower, and then I'll go in the cold plunge, and I just know it's going to be the hardest thing that I do all day. And getting that out of the way, not only do I feel super energized, I also feel more motivated and refreshed. I'm not overheated anymore. It's such a nice way to start the day. And this will probably look completely different in the winter. Now, only time will tell how long our cold plunge holds up. I know Alex did a great job and he worked really hard on it, so I have high hopes. Now, as I mentioned before, I will be putting together a video that goes over my personal journey through cold exposure, but in the meantime, I've picked out a few other videos that I thought you might like. So I will see you in the next one.